Have you ever asked yourself a simple question? How come banks in Kenya that offer dollar accounts, the interest rate they're offering on the Kenya shilling account is always very different from what they will offer you on a dollar account? Have you ever paused to ask yourself the question why? So what's 12% in Kenya, when you calculate it in dollars, is about 7%. So the S&P 500, if you have a 401k, for example, here in the US, your employer HR department will ask you to select a fund. And usually there's some funds, like they'll tell you there's this conservative one, there's this aggressive one. I will always recommend, like whenever you're selecting a fund there, always ask them if there's an S&P 500 or a total stock market. That's 100% equities. This is the one thing that I will say, just take it from me. So the S&P 500, if you have a 401k, for example, here in the US, your employer HR department will ask you to select a fund. And usually there's some funds, like they'll tell you there's this conservative one, there's this aggressive one. I will always recommend, like whenever you're selecting a fund there, always ask them if there's an S&P 500 or a total stock market. That's 100% equities. This is the one thing that I will say, just take it from me. Because they'll give you so many different options.
Yeah, they do. It's
what
overwhelming.
Mix it with bonds, mix it with, forget about the target date. A lot of people are pushed towards target date funds. And I'm sure 9 out of 10 people listening here, all the sophisticated people have target date funds. Those target date funds, they're the most expensive and they tend to perform.
They fluctuate.
No, they tend to perform, or in the long run, they tend to be outperformed by the market. So the S&P 500, this is the biggest 500 companies in the US. They're about, like 80 to 90% of the total stock market capitalization. And they've been giving a steady return for a very long, the last few years, the average has been about 20%. So I like giving the 10%, average, which 10 to 12%, which is what I tell people. So with the S&P 500, typically it will take 7 years to double your money. 7 years. And this is
so if I had invested this same 30 million
yes.
in Kenya, so it would take
if you had invested it 7 years ago in
yes.
the S&P 500,
yes,
you would have your return. And you know why you would have more money?
You said it takes me to double. So that means I would have 60 million.
Yes, you would have 60 million.
Okay.
But now you would have it in dollars. Here's the thing. Remember, if you invested that 7 years ago, when the dollar was 80 something, or maybe let's say 100. Let's call it 100. Let's call it 90.
Okay,
whatever amount it was.
Okay.
Whatever amount it was.
Yes.
So all this money that, because over the long run, the Kenya shilling, I know we are in a period where it kind of like slipped back.
Yeah.
But in the long run, it always loses to the dollar. If you look at the last 30 years,
correct,
there are moments, yes, when it will go back, but it always goes back up again.
The only point where investing in a foreign country really works is when, and this actually messed up the stock market a few months ago. If you guys remember, there's a day we woke up and the stock market was red because Japan had increased its interest rates.
Yes.
Yes, that was the only time investing in a foreign market. That is the only time investing in a foreign market works. And that is why everybody in the world goes to borrow money from Japan, come and invest it in companies in Europe and the US to make that money, because when they are repaying that money back to Japan, it's cheaper. So when Japan increased the rates, guess what? The price of the loan that they had borrowed to invest went high. And that is why the stock market went low, because they had to pay back that loan real quick before they had to pay for the interest. But if you're ever crossing money through borders, do not expect a profit. Rarely does it happen like
yes. So when, like I tell people, you're earning your money in US dollars. So you should always calculate your returns in US dollars. And this is where those people who are fighting me, this is the math they don't want to, they're burying their heads in the sand. This is where, because like when you say 10%, let's say you invested $100,000 when the dollar,
based upon what we've been using for this flat.
Yeah.
It's this flat. It's $300,000.
So let's say
at the rate it's $300,000 that you use.
To even make it simpler, let's take $100,000 investment back when the dollar was 100. That's 10 million. That's 10 million in Kenya. So you've invested and you're earning your 10% return. So first year you earn 10%, you earned your 1 million. Second year 10%, third year you earn 10%. So you've earned 3 million. So now total plus the cost of the flat, you have 13 million. Guess what? The same guy, the guy who had that $100,000 in the US sitting in a bank or under a mattress, now has more money than you. You know why? Because that $100,000 is now equal to your 13 million. I don't know whether we're on the same page. So let me go back again.
Exchange rate. I get it.
Yeah, let me go back again. So
because exchange rate right now is at 130.
So you took 100K and changed it to Kenya shillings to buy an apartment for 10 million.
Yes.
So each year you're earning 1 million from that apartment. So after 3 years, you've earned 3 million.
Yes.
So you have the 10 million, the value of the apartment, and 3 million that you've earned. That's a total of 13.
Yes.
Now a guy who was seated in America with that $100,000 in a checking account, no interest, no nothing.
Yes.
The guy now, when he converts that 100,000, it's the same amount as your, and
as my investment that I've gone and hired a caretaker. I went and I bought what is it called?
You are evicting tenants.
Zile nini za maji nikaweka huko juu na mapumps zimewekwa hapo. Sijui kuna solar nimeweka hapo because I'm a generous guy. Ati sijui matenanties, ati sijui nimewawekea kamaji. No, I'm just saying. No, I'm just now giving an example because some people actually do that. Okay, Mika, do you know that us as who lived here in the diaspora, we are way landlords. Sikwa ubaya. Because tukona kale ka, I don't know what you want to call it. Because I have seen some I've seen some cutthroat things being done. I'm like, I even tell my chap, no, don't do this, no. Ujama ni sawa.
But not to lose the point is that a lot of people who are calculating their returns, they refuse to look at the fact that they earn their money in dollars.
Yes.
And they're looking at their returns in Kenya shillings, and you're losing. Have you ever asked yourself a simple question? How come banks in Kenya that offer dollar accounts, the interest rate they're offering on the Kenya shilling account is always very different from what they will offer you on a dollar account? Have you ever paused to ask yourself the question why? So what's 12% in Kenya, when you calculate it in dollars, is about 7%. So what you're calling a 12% return is actually a 7% return.